Hi and welcome to Old Time Knowledge. Well, in this video I am going to be showing you how I make naan bread. My son and I absolutely love naan bread. We have it with curry and different things, but anyway, let's just get right into it. First thing, I'm going to go ahead and add some sugar to the bowl. It calls for a teaspoon of sugar. Next, I'm going to get the yeast, and this is exactly why I love to buy yeast in bulk, like from Sam's Club, those big kind of vacuum sealed packages of yeast, because it ends up, I end up being able to fill a quart jar with one of those, and it lasts me a long time. So it calls for 1/4 ounce of active dry yeast, which is the same as 2 1/4 teaspoons. This would be the same as one of those little packets of yeast you buy from the store, but it's so much cheaper when you get it this way. So if you can, I definitely recommend getting these big blocks of yeast that you can then put in a jar and use. Next, it's going to call for 1/2 cup of warm water. You don't want it hot. You don't want it more than like 105 degrees because then it can start to kill the yeast. But you definitely want it warm because that's what's going to start getting that yeast happy and it's going to be activated. And I'm just stirring it around to get that sugar mixed in really good. And I could go ahead and add the oil here, but instead I'm going to add the flour, and I'll add the oil in a minute. So this calls for 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. And that's what I'm putting in right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in a teaspoon of salt. I've seen some recipes that call for less salt, but this seems to be the perfect amount for our naan bread. But you know, when you make it, if you decide you want less, you can definitely use less. But I just think this recipe is perfect. I've tried so many naan recipes, but this one to me is the very best. All right, now I'm going to add in a tablespoon of oil. I'm just using regular canola oil here. You can use olive oil, whatever kind of oil you want, but it should be something that doesn't have a lot of flavor to it. It should be pretty neutral. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start mixing this up. And once I get these ingredients incorporated, because right now I'm trying to really get the salt mixed in and get that oil mixed in, then I'll be adding in some plain yogurt. And I just use this regular Greek yogurt here, just the plain Greek yogurt. And I keep this in a tub in the refrigerator. Y'all, if you have this and it's a little bit past the expiration date, don't throw it out. It's fine. Yogurt doesn't really go bad very easily. You can keep using it. I mean, in our case, we use it up before it would ever go bad. But we definitely don't throw yogurt out just because it's past the date. So this is actually going to call for 1/2 cup of just plain yogurt. And like I say, I use the Greek yogurt, but you can also just use regular plain yogurt. Okay. And now I need to get this mixed in, and then it's just going to be a matter of working all the ingredients together and then kneading the dough. So let me use the fork first to get all these ingredients incorporated really well. And once everything is sort of starting to hold together, that's when I'll get in there with my hands and really start working on the dough. Also, when I put the dough to rise, you know, it's going to rise for about an hour, but you know, hopefully your kitchen's kind of warm. Before you start making your naan bread, you're going to want to get your skillet really hot. I mean, I don't mean like on high, but you want it really hot because otherwise it's going to just start sticking to your skillet, and that's not what you want. So anyway, I'm just kneading this dough, and here in a minute I'm going to speed this up. I'm also going to be getting the dough out of the bowl so I can work it on my little preparation board there. And I do this because, y'all, I have very limited counter space, and so my stove top is often a great place for me to do these things, and yet I don't want to do this right directly on my stove top. So instead I use this little butcher block cutting board. And this is the one I mostly use for things like pastries and things, or if I'm canning and I'm taking jars out of the canner or whatever, I'll use this one sometimes and put a towel on it. But anyway, so I'm just working this dough. You're going to keep working the dough and kneading the dough until it becomes smooth and pliable. And like I say, I'm going to speed this up so that you can see what it's going to look like when it's done. I'll hold it up, but you can just pay attention. Right now you can see that it's kind of lumpy. It doesn't look very smooth. It looks kind of, you can see the creases in it. You can see where it's kind of holding together. But once I've really worked it and kneaded it and gotten it to where it needs to be, and this is the way it is with dough. Anytime you're working with yeast and you need to knead the dough, it's going to get to the point where it's just smooth and stretchy and pliable. So at this point, I think I'm just going to go ahead and start speeding it up. So as you're noticing, my technique here involves a lot of rolling and pressing and folding. I've got a little bit of flour on the board to start off with, but honestly, y'all, this particular dough is a pretty stiff dough. It holds together really well. It's not very sticky. Sometimes if you're doing yeast rolls or something like that, it can be a really sticky dough because it doesn't have a ton of flour in it. It's just a lighter, fluffier dough. But in this case, it holds together so well. I just keep working it and rolling it, and eventually I can tell, I'll feel it in my hands, and I'm going to show you. Okay, see how it's so smooth there? It's smooth. It's way different than it was earlier where you could see all those creases and lumps and everything. So now I'm just going to get a bowl, and I'm going to put just a little bit of oil, inside, just with my hand, just smooth it around a little bit. And then I'll put the dough in the bowl and let it rest for about an hour until the dough begins to rise. Looks like I actually sprayed it with some Pam. I'm noticing this. I'm recording the audio after I did this because the day I was making this, I was busy doing a lot of other things. So I forgot if I use. Sometimes I'll just use olive oil, but in this case it was Pam. So I'm putting a damp cloth over it. Another thing you can do is you can just get like a grocery bag or something like that and tuck it over the top like a plastic grocery bag. And that's also a great way to let dough rise. So I'm going to let this rise and I'll bring you back when it's ready. I have my skillet super hot. The dough is ready now. I've poked it a couple of times and it's just slowly starting to come up. I bet you can't see it on video, but trust me, very slowly it starts to come back up. You don't want it springing right back because that means it's not quite ready yet. But in this case, it's slowly coming back up, so it's good. So now I'm going to just dump the dough out on the board, and I'm going to use my little pastry cutter to go ahead and cut it into 8 equal portions, well, as equal as I can possibly make them. Y'all, this little pastry cutter, bench cutter, whatever it's called, came from Dollar Tree. They have these at Dollar Tree, and this is so good. I've had this for years, and I absolutely love it. So I just cut it into quarters, and then I cut each of those in half. And I'm going to be rolling these out and getting them to where they're nice and flat enough that they're going to be perfect for naan bread. So I've got that skillet. I've got that skillet really hot. Yes, the burner's only on medium, but it's been on for a while, so it's really hot and it's ready. And I'll probably turn it up as I go. And usually the first one never comes out the best. It's kind of like when you make pancakes. The first pancake never comes out the best either. At least that's the way it is for me. But after that, they're just perfect because it's gotten hot enough. I've adjusted it enough. It's just exactly right. So I'm just rolling it out with my rolling pin. I know about how thick it needs to be. I've turned it back and forth, to get both sides and to get it kind of round. I don't care if it's a perfect shape. And you can play with it because you'll get a feel for it. And if you end up wanting it to be a little thicker, you can. But I find it's fine if it's kind of thin because it's going to puff up anyway in the pan. So you just roll this out and it's almost ready, and I'm going to get it in the pan. I usually put a few drops of water in the pan like I just did. I want to see it sizzle. I've turned the pan up just a little bit. Like I say, it's already been heating for a long time, so it is hot, but I just want it slightly hotter because I want to see those drops of water sizzle when I put them in the pan. And then I'll be confident that it's ready. And I think I feel pretty good about it now. So I'm putting this in there. You're going to start seeing little bubbles come up in that piece of naan while it's cooking. And like I said, the first one never is the best. It'll come out, but it will be a little flatter than the others. It won't usually be as puffy as the other ones will, but it's fine. It all works out just fine. So, and while you're looking at that one, as it's cooking, you see I'm rolling out that other one, and soon I'll be flipping the one that's in the pan. These shouldn't stick. You know, you probably noticed I did have the pan greased. I mean, all I did, and this is what I'll typically do. I will actually keep, I'll put a little bit of oil in the pan first and sort of wipe it around with a paper towel. And then I'll keep that paper towel off to the side while I'm cooking the naan bread, because that way if I notice the pan starts drying out, I just take that paper towel and I wipe the pan with it to sort of refresh the oil layer that's on the pan. I don't use Pam spray for this. I just use, like I say, a paper towel. See, it's not brown yet on that side. And that's okay. You gotta get a feel for it, but you don't want it too hot because then it'll burn. So I don't mind letting things get just right for that first piece of bread, because after this one, it's going to be golden, just exactly perfect. Okay, I'm going to get ready to turn this over here in just a second. And you see it's starting to get those little brown spots on there. And I don't know if you can tell. I'm not sure if it shows up well enough, but as I touch it like that and press down on it, it starts to puff up. This same thing happens if you're making tortillas. And I think what it is it's got something to do with the steam inside. I'm not going to really pretend to understand what happens. I'm sure there's a lot of far more skilled cooks than me who know exactly what's happening. I just know when you press down on something like this, it can start causing it to just start puffing up in the places where you're pressing it down. So that's what you'll see me do occasionally. You'll see me press or touch the tops or the other side of this naan bread as it's cooking, just to get it to sort of puff up some more. And I'm kind of trying to gauge this one to decide if I think it's ready to flip again. You don't want to flip it too many times, because when you're flipping these things too many times, it just kind of makes them tough. Now see, look at that. I love to see that. That's when it starts really doing the magic. It's really starting to get hot and it just starts puffing up real good. And that's what you're looking for. And so once this is happening, then I know it's going to start really, the subsequent pieces that I put in the skillet are just going to cook up a lot quicker. So, but again, don't flip it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It'll just make it kind of tough or kind of crispy, and I don't really think you're going for that. And in fact, when you make this, you can, it's okay if you leave it so that it's not quite as toasty as you want it when you eat it, because if you're making a whole lot of it, sometimes it's good just before you serve it if you just toast the individual pieces that you're going to serve in the skillet. Just like you'd heat up tortillas to make them nice and toasty right before you serve them. I know in like Mexican restaurants and stuff, they'll heat them up and wrap them in a piece of aluminum foil and serve them to you. And then they're kind of like, I don't know, almost damp. But, a lot of times you might want them to be more toasty. So I have a paper towel, not a paper towel, a kitchen towel over there with a piece of parchment in it. That's folded over just to keep it in, and that's just so that it can breathe, but at the same time it's keeping it nice and warm. See, now I'm using that paper towel that I told you about that had oil on it, and just to replenish the oil that was on the skillet. And when I put this next piece of dough in, I don't just drop it and leave it. I like to sort of move it around a little bit, because that goes ahead and tells me, it's not going to stick. It's going ahead and cooking it real quick. It's not going to get fixed in one place. And you see it's puffing up a lot quicker than it did before. And so meanwhile, I'm going to be rolling out the next piece. And I think I'm just going to start speeding this up here, because you're going to get the idea of how this works. And you see that bread is like puffing up a lot quicker than the other one did. It's getting those bubbles in it way quicker. So I'm going to show you this when I flip it over. And so that one started getting those little brown spots a whole lot faster. and it's going to just start puffing up a whole lot faster, and the whole process is going to go quicker. So I'm going to speed things up because you're going to get the hang of this. I want you to see me rolling all of these out and seeing the process as it goes. But look, you see how they start just really puffing up really quick. And I add a little bit of oil back to the pan each time with that paper towel, and it works great. I don't flip the bread too many times. It's a you know, you kind of got to get the hang of it as far as the timing. Rolling the dough out, putting it in the skillet, letting it cook long enough, then getting the next one in there. You have to kind of work quick, but you'll get the hang of it. And just go ahead and know that first one's probably not going to be perfect. If it is, congratulations. But it's never been that way for me, that the first one is perfect. So I'm getting closer to being done. And as soon as these are done, because of the fact that I have one working large burner, I'll be cooking the curry on the same burner. So I need to keep my bread warm while I'm cooking the curry. Fortunately, I'll be using some shredded chicken that I already had cooked, so it won't take me very long at all to get the curry sauce mixed up in the skillet and get it coating the chicken really good. And the rice is already ready, and so it'll be real fast to get this plated up. So this is the last piece. All right, there we go. So now here we go. I'm plating it up. I've got some curry with some rice, and I'm going to show you how this naan bread turned out. You see it's all super flexible. The pieces, they don't break or anything like that. They're just nice and pliable. It's hot, it's delicious. It just tastes so good. So usually what I'll do is I'll serve a couple of these with a plate, and then we come back and can get more. But it folds over and folds over again, and that's what you want. You don't want it so that it's cracking. You don't want it so that it's splitting in two or anything like that. And when you tear it, it should just be nice and soft, and it's just so good. So I hope you make this, and I hope you let me know what you think in the comments below. If you make it one time and it doesn't come out perfect, don't give up. Try it again. It took me a couple of times before I got the hang of it, but this is a keeper. This recipe, there are many naan recipes, but this one is the best. I hope you make this, and I hope you will let me know what you think in the comments below. I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.